And from my own experience, it was a blink of an eye and my pain disappeared. Like I was having the chest, tightness and the heaviness in the arm and the nausea and the panic and all the rest of it. And then I was floating in this bliss, no awareness of pain whatsoever.
When you were out of your body and did everything look the same? Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Soul Inspired. Today, I'm really happy to have a medium and mentor with me by the name of Ioanna Serpanos, and she also has had a near-death experience. We're going to be talking to her about that today. So, first of all, Ioanna, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending some time with us to tell us about your experience.
Thank you so much for having me, Joe.
And I understand, like we said before, you're in Australia. No, are you in New Zealand or Australia?
Australia.
Australia,
In
right.
Melbourne, Australia. Yes.
Yeah, and as I was saying, it's I get confused between the two, so I don't know why I do that, but it's just I guess I don't know my geography that well. But so I wanted to know right away. Usually I ask right away what your life was like before you had your experience.
Absolutely. I was actually an engineer working in the automotive industry. I was a recent mum, so a brand new mum to a toddler, so two nearly roughly 3-year-old little girl. And I was working, in that corporate environment. So very different to what I'm doing today.
So you were an engineer. You went to school for engineering?
Yes. I went to university. I graduated as an electronics engineer, and then I moved briefly into the naval antenna area, and then moved across into automotive, and loved that. And that was my main life. I was very passionate about the car industry, working in my field, working at the forefront of technology.
Would you say that you would have been then a science based individual at the time? I'm just curious if you were in the engineering.
100%. I'm a bit of a science geek, and I still am, to be honest. I do love the science, quantum physics, and anything like that. I'm very fascinated in technology, love the science.
Okay, and what kind of upbringing did you have with like religion and things like that? Did you have any kind of beliefs or
Yeah.
anything like that before the experience happened?
Yeah, I do. So I was never a practicing religious person, but with my religion, so I have a Greek background. I was raised from a first generation migrant Greek family. That's so my mother and father immigrated to Australia from Greece. With that comes, of course, the religion of Greek Orthodox. So very, you know, Christian upbringing, if you like. My mother was quite religious. My father, not so much. He was more the science-based man and, practical. But, church was part of our upbringing. I do have a very early understanding, though. Like my mother tells me that I always prayed. I wasn't taught to pray, but I prayed. I don't know if I understood what that concept was. Like, was it God that I was praying to? I don't know, but I did have the practice of prayer. And I wasn't sure about mainstream religion, to be honest. I remember going to church in my teens and wondering what it was all about, and questioning a lot of it as well. So it was quite interesting.
Okay, so you had a lot, much like a lot of us have. You're raised and maybe you were baptized, things like that. You're just
Yes,
raised to
correct. Yeah,
follow the religion that you were brought into. Okay, so that's
correct. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so that's pretty typical, and a lot of people go through that and question what they're even doing, why they're getting on their knees and getting off their knees and on their knees and off their knees, and those types of things. And okay, so I kind of have an understanding of that. And okay, so just diving right in, what happened when you had the near death experience? Can you bring us to the day it happened and what was going on?
Mm. So I was going through a lot of intense stress in my marriage at the time. So, as I said, I was a recent mum to my one and only, my beautiful daughter. And at that time, I was dropping her off to the childcare facility so that I could continue on my way to work. And what I did was I dropped her off, got in the car, and I'm driving down 4 lanes of peak morning traffic. Everything's back to back. And in a fairly highly stressed sort of environment, like emotionally stressed. And I recall all of a sudden my heart just made this massive sort of beat and this awful pain. And my hand dropped off the steering wheel. And next thing I know, I was floating above my body, looking at myself, in this car. And it was like time was suspended, like everything just stopped. And I was floating there looking. And then I had this sense of something above me that was really beautiful. So I remember turning my head and looking up and feeling this incredible sense of love and this incredible sense of expansion and me wanting to move that way. So I started to look up and I quickly forgot about what was happening down there. I did see a incredible face, what was it? I don't know. I call it an angel because I wrote about this in a book, but it was a being, and it was a very loving being. Was it a guide? I'm not sure. And in that moment of suspension and sitting there and feeling very loved, very as if I was belonging, as if I had a sense of wanting to go home. And there was this moment where I felt, I think other people talk about it, you're like the drop of water and then you're the whole ocean at the same time. So I was very aware I was me, but I was also very aware I was part of something larger than me, a oneness, if you like. And I was given a brief moment where I was reminded, I was told I could continue going or I could return. So the choice was mine at that point in time. And I was reminded of what my mission was, to why I was here on earth, why I'd incarnated. And that mission was very, very simple. I was to be a vessel of unconditional love, which was quite profound at the time. Of course, all this happened in the split second because you don't take it all in. It's sort of unpacking it. But then I have a memory, a very distinct memory of suddenly I went, who's going to look after my child, like my baby? And as soon as I had that moment, I thought, there is no way I'm going to leave her on her own. And then suddenly I was back in my car and feeling the full pain of that, and sort of continuing to drive. I just wanted to add one bit to that, which I forgot to mention, was while I was floating, before I made that decision, I was shown what would happen. So I could see myself like a video being played out. I would veer to my right. Now, remember, we're on the other side of the road for us, so we drive on the right. I would have veered to the right. I would have taken out the 3 cars next to me in this lane. And the bloke on the left of me would have seen me veered and done this maneuver and then taken out someone on that side. So it was going to be a huge accident at that point if I'd continued going up and not wanting to come back. So when I was back, I obviously very distressed. I was in pain. I do not know how I got to work, but one of my colleagues jumped in my car and drove me straight to the emergency, so I ended up being wired up and checked out, of course, and had an ECG and all the rest of it. And what they found was that I had, even though I had this what I call a heart attack, they called it a heart incident because there was no damage to my physical heart. But they were like, we can't explain it, but there's no physical damage. And what the research has shown is that you can actually have a heart attack from emotional pain and have all the same things happen, the same pain receptor sites, etc., but you don't get a physical damage to your heart. And it was quite interesting because I found that out later, but they were like, and they were kind of giving me, then they talked to me because they gave me medication for inflammation around the heart. So although I didn't have damage to the heart, I ended up with pericarditis, which is the sheath that the physical heart sits in. And it took me about 6 to 8 weeks of recovery. And then I was on medication for nearly a year for the heart. So it was huge and life-changing, because obviously I'm not an engineer anymore. I've moved into mediumship and my whole world changed.
Wow. Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. So it's a little bit of a different one than I've talked to you. I'm actually really excited to have you on. One of the things I tell everybody is I don't dive in when I get guests on. I really like to hear it firsthand. I find that if I listen and find out a little bit, it confuses my direction of what I want to ask. And I try to be the listener, right? I'm trying to be my audience. So
Yeah.
thinking of the things that are coming to me, there's quite a few questions that came to me as you were explaining that. So I'll try to dive in a little bit. So just so I can recap, I also like to recap, and sometimes I do it wrong, but let me know. You are driving back, you had dropped off, you had a child, you were dropped off at the daycare or childcare. Is that right? And you were coming
Yes,
back from
correct.
there.
Yep.
And while you're driving back and you're going through these changes in your life, quite emotional changes in your life, you feel something wrong in your chest. You immediately feel like a heaviness in your arm. And the next thing you know, you're out of your body. Was there any one question I would have was there a mass amount of pain before you popped out, or were you just one moment in the car and the next moment you remembered being out of the car?
Blink of the eye. I had the pain before, and as I said, my arm dropped from the steering wheel, so I couldn't grip the steering wheel. And then it was no pain, just in the stillness of it. To me, it's like the in-between of the breath. There's just the stillness of it.
That's really interesting because when I started this podcast, I had all these topics I've been totally into, and one of the big ones was NDEs, and I didn't know. I decided to bring in different guests in all different areas, and I feel like we're niching down into the near-death experience type category of things now. And because I've been studying this for a long time, and I remember seeing a video from, I don't know when it would have been, it's on YouTube, but it was from the 90s. And it was a celebrity that was explaining her going into one of those tubes where to get her brain looked at. And she kind of panicked or something in there and brought on her own death
Oh,
through
wow.
through panic, through I
Yeah.
mean, I don't, not to scare people, you're going to die from panicking,
Mm.
but for whatever reason, she had this experience. And she immediately was right beside her body, looking at herself in this place. And the question that was posed to her, and this is back in the 90s when near-death experiences, it was a bit of a more of a topic you didn't talk about. But the host, and I don't know whether it was, I don't know, I don't want to say which host it was, but they asked, did it take a long time, like to get to the others? And they were like, she was like, no, it's literally right here. It's right
Yeah.
beside me. Like it's in the same place. Now, that being said, as I've talked to other NDErs, they have all different experiences. What is the
Mm.
place that happens when you first jump out compared to where you go if you go to the tunnel? And then I talk to people who talk about levels of existence or planes of existence. And I think it's so much more complicated than we can wrap our heads around. We can try our best to, and I think I'm learning more. But the reason I asked you if it hurt is because I wonder sometimes if we know there's a pain coming, can we just leave? I always wonder that when
Yeah.
people go through a
Yeah.
traumatic accident
Yeah.
or injury, because I've heard of
Yeah.
people leaving before and then they see themselves get in the accident before they even feel the physical pain. So isn't
Yeah.
that, I didn't know
That's
if that's
incredible. I
kind of how
would
you
like to
felt.
answer that from the perspective, Joe, of the mediumship, because obviously I work with, I now for the last, 16 odd years full time, I've been working as a full-time professional medium. Prior to that, I was part-time. And I get shown a lot of the time, obviously with the medium, you'll see all sorts of deaths. Or near-death experiences. So from the tragic, from people that have taken their own lives, from horrendous, from murders and other horrendous deaths. And every single time I've communicated with spirit, they tell me every single time I was not in pain, I was pulled out of my body. And I do feel that the soul has a divine intelligence that says we don't have to experience that massive amount of pain. Of course, the physical body goes through the trauma and whatever else happens, but the soul doesn't. And I've seen that time and time again. And I hope that, by me saying that the listeners can take some comfort from that. And from my own experience, it was a blink of an eye and my pain disappeared. Like I was having the chest, tightness and the heaviness in the arm and the nausea and the panic and all the rest of it. And then I was floating in this bliss, no awareness of pain whatsoever.
When you were out of your body, and did everything look the same? Because you said you were
Um,
above the car. Were you looking through the car? Could you see yourself? Were you
I could
just
see myself, yeah, through it. So I was above the car. I could see like a bird's eye view. It's a good question because as I reflect back, because no one's really asked me that question, I saw it slightly hazy is probably how I would describe it. So for me, if I put my engineer's brain on, I would say we're slightly out of sync frequency-wise. So I do believe there's a shift in frequency. The crispness of looking down at myself, it wasn't there. There was a haziness to it. So the lines weren't crisp as we would see with this perception in this world. So
right?
yeah, it's almost dreamlike in many ways. But so if you've ever had a lucid dream or a vivid dream, you don't get that crispness. Yes, you can see everything that's going on, but it's not as starkly in focus as what it would be in the physical.
And what's really interesting is you didn't see the top or roof of the car. Instead, you saw through it. So it makes you wonder if in that place, what you focus on is what you see, almost like I hate to use the word invisible, and
Yeah,
invisibility, like Harry Potter,
yeah.
the invisibility cloak, but in a way it is kind of like that. And it sounds like something out of a science fiction film, but the thing is, and one thing I've discovered off talking to so many people so far is I would be ignorant in thinking that this is everything that I
Mm,
understand, meaning we're evolving, right? We just
correct.
continue to evolve. So
Mhm.
why in my existence in the year 2024 would I know everything? So
Yes.
to
Yeah.
question, well, how could you see through the car? That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to someone living on Earth in 2024, but maybe in 3024 it will. Like, we don't know what that means, that we don't know,
Yeah.
because that's a different it's a different plane or something
Mhm.
changes, right? So you're out, and whatever your focus is on, you can see it, and obviously your focus is on you because this is a
Of
big
course.
moment, something is
Yeah.
happening. So was
Yeah.
was there light around you, or did you just focus in on the car, on the vehicle
I
drive?
focused in when I was looking down on me because whoever they, the universe, whatever, was showing me what the outcome would be. So if I
Right.
continued down that path, what I found really profound for me was that I had that choice. I really literally had a choice. And so I hadn't gone beyond a certain point. When I looked up at that beautiful being's face, for me, it felt like a very soft pink, very light pink light. And the face was almost like, if you look through water and you just put your face through and you're looking down at the sand through water, it was almost like the face was coming out through some sort of uh, surface, a plane of existence. I'm not sure, I don't have the words, but it was like that. But I knew that it didn't feel scary and it didn't feel unusual. It wasn't like I was looking at it going, oh, what is that? It felt familiar and it felt like home. So
Okay.
for me, there was a delight and an excitement. Oh, wow, there I am again. And I can honestly say when I came back for my daughter, obviously, of course, as any mum would, but it took me about 5 or 6 years. I really grieved being in the physical again. It was a very unusual, there was a deep, profound grief of, oh, I'm here when instead of being there. And it's not, I want to be clear, I'd never, want to take my life or not be here. I love being in this physical world as well. But there was a real longing to be back into that space where there's this incredible love, and there's this incredible acceptance and this incredible belonging, and you just know that you're not separate.
I love that. And it's something I hear often. I don't think there's many people I've talked to who've had an NDE that were wanting to throw a party when they came back. They, they were they were thinking, why did I make that decision when I did? So I'm gonna ask you two questions here, and maybe you can kind of cover both of them. The first question I was gonna ask you was, did it feel more real there than here? That's one question I wanted to know. So, and again, I guess it depends on how you define real. And the
Mm,
question I was going to ask you, you mentioned that if you did see almost like a movie play out, if you
mm,
had decided to leave this incarnation, um, and that would have impacted other souls in a way
absolutely.
because there were other individuals involved. Do you remember being told if any of them would lose their life because of that decision?
Yeah, so to answer the second question first, I do not recall whether their lives would be lost or not. They certainly would have been impacted. They, would have had, it would have been quite because we're going at speed, it's a high speed, peak morning sort of experience. And so they would have done some damage for sure, possibly loss of life. I'm not sure. And that's the crazy thing in some ways, because you think, we have we don't think that we have a huge impact on the world around us, especially not to random people. Of course, we think we do to family and friends and things like that, but really, we're not as disconnected as we think. My experience would have impacted random people that happen to be driving around me at the same time. Is it synchronicity? Is it coincidence? Or is it a greater plan? And they're big questions, and I don't really have the answer. So that was how I sort of saw that. To me, my personal experience was that both worlds are real, and so the other world wasn't less real or more real. It was just another world. So for me, it was like walking out of one door, one room, if you like, and going into another room and seeing. And in the room that's here on Earth is a particular decor, and this is how it looks like, particular style. We walk through the door, and suddenly I'm in a completely different room with a different decor. Is one better than the other or more real than the other? Probably not, but it's definitely different.
Okay, I like that answer. Did
Mm.
you feel that if you had decided to leave your body, um, as Ioanna, if you would have left that body, did you know in any way, or did you have a feeling of certainty that you would still exist beyond that body?
Yes, yes. In that glimpse I had, that moment, I still knew I was me. I could still have all my memories with me, all my experiences with me. So I didn't feel I'd changed, other than that I wasn't in the human skin, in the physicality. So I knew I was me, but I also felt merged with, I could hear voices and other thoughts, and not physically, just I'm part of this symphony of souls. I could feel and hear and know that I was part of, and that's probably the right word. I've never described it like that. It was a symphony of souls. So I was a music note amongst a whole score that was being played, but I knew I was the individual note as well.
Right. I love that. And you know, it's interesting because obviously if you did pass, then the version of you that you are here, the physical body, the life you live, everything you have would cease to exist in the
Mm,
material world, but that you would still continue to exist elsewhere, which means you aren't exactly just you of what I know you as and what I see you
yes.
as. There's something
Yeah.
more to you. And it takes me into a place, and I don't know where I'll go with this question, but it's something that I've really been again, I've been studying near-death experiences since I was probably around 16 or 17, obsessively. And it
Yeah.
kind of led me down this as a musician. It made me more soulful and trying to kind of get into my own place in life and to lose the fear of death. That was a big anxiety culprit of mine growing up. And because I obsessed over it, I came to different conclusions. We all do. Anyone listening to this episode will come to their own conclusions of what feels right for them. And one interesting thing that I've been finding, I've talked to people who've had an NDE and they end up passing
Hmm.
away, and they go and they don't fully pass away, obviously, because they're still here to tell me the
No,
story,
that's
but
right.
they see their loved ones, and amongst those loved ones, they say, "Oh, yeah, these are all people that have passed in my life, whether it's their grandfathers, great grandparents." And then all of a sudden, they'll see their best friend. Well, their best friend is very much alive in this world.
Mm.
And they go, "Well, what are you doing here?" Right? Like this is, and they go to, some of them been told, "No, like this is where it get, and this is where a lot of people get lost with this idea that
Mm.
what I've concluded is this is what I feel, and I could
Yes.
be wrong. This is my own
Yeah.
feeling that we have our higher self that is always there, and we have we've come down here uh in our souls. We've come down
Mm.
in this, you said it, I think you said it kind of like a drop in the ocean, but we are the ocean,
Yes.
right? So if we're part of
Yeah.
if we are the ocean, um, then a drop is who we are here on planet Earth in 2024. But so when we die, we just lose that drop, but we're still part of the ocean. So, and then you get to the question of, well, how many drops do we have going? And then it gets really interesting,
Correct.
right?
I would challenge you on the losing the drop. I feel the drop comes back.
Okay.
The drop is transformed, and we know that through science. We know that energy is neither created or destroyed. It's got to be converted back to something. Um, it's quite timely you're talking about this right now, because if we'd had our interview, and done this podcast a couple of weeks ago, I would have said, I'm not sure. But I had an experience last week where I attended a breathwork workshop. I'd never done breathwork before. It was an introductory thing, and they took us to through the breath, a place of expanded consciousness. And they asked us to set an intention before we went in to do the breath work. And I thought I'll send an intention out that I want to work on my healing, the healing of me. And when I was in that meditation, and you go into that really deep space, and your consciousness expands. I had a moment where I saw that being again, that being that I saw when I was transitioning and trying to decide what to do. It really shocked me in a good way, because I wasn't expecting to connect with it again, but I did. And what I got shown in my mind's eye was that I was this droplet of light here on earth as Ioanna in my physical body. And then I got shown a larger light in the spirit world, in the other plane, whatever you want to call it. And then I saw an umbilical cord of light tethering the two here and there. And this being said, the words I got was, "You are the light of my light." And then I got told we can exist here and there at the same time. And that was pretty huge for me. It took me a few days to wrap my head around that. And what you've talked about there is pretty much what, you've given me. You've pretty much said the same thing. What I understood, though, was that light gets transformed. It goes back to the oneness. So yes, we lose the biology, the carbon, the human part of us that goes into, the earth. Of course we do, but the spirit part of us does not. And that spirit which animates us, that gives us our personality, because we're more than our brain. We're not just the brain. We know that, because the brain people can be brain dead and they can still see and have all these experiences. So we know that already. So if we are that, and that part of us, my mentor, my mediumship mentor, called it the droplets of the God source, the God source being the oneness, and we are droplets of the God source here on earth. And that little droplet goes back. And that's what I got shown in that meditation. And that was really profound for me. because it took away that sense of grief of, oh no, I have to be in this earthly plane, which a lot of us have when we've had these experiences. It actually resolved that for me. It was
Right.
like, oh, I'm still there, but I'm here as well. And of course, my perception is through the eyes of Ioanna that's here on this earth. But I know, because through that experience, that my oversoul, whatever you want to call it, also has perception, and that tethering is where the communication goes, and it can be quite seamless.
I think what can be beautiful about what you just shared is if you think of people who have a loved one that's passing, could be somebody that spent an entire life together, soulmates, whatever we want to call them, and they're saying goodbye. If what we're saying is the way it is, you're not really saying goodbye because you're still over there and you're still gonna be there. You're still gonna see
Yeah.
each other immediately because it
Yeah,
means that the person remaining here is also over there.
correct. Correct.
So it's
And
not that you
remember,
have to wait for the person, oh, I'll see you in 15 years when you come to. No, I'm going to see you in 2 seconds. Once I work out whatever goes on, whether it's a life review and all these things we all see in a bit. I, and that can bring it. I would just say that we could bring a lot of comfort to people if that is the case. And the more I speak to people, and I've only been doing this for a little bit, and because I'm really trying to dig deep into this and really trying to unfold what is going on. Because if that is the case, it really can bring a lot of comfort. I'm going to ask you a question that I've never asked anyone. I just feel like it's the right time to do it. It's something that has always been on my mind.
mm,
And I'm trying to myself to break this apart. And you may not know this. I mean, you had your experience, but I'm curious to know what your feelings and thoughts are on this. So, when we're here on this earth, we have individuality. We have, I'm Joe Borowsky. I'm a singer, songwriter. I'm a podcast host, a teacher, a coach, all these things I do. And I've got an ego and I'm proud of who I am, or I'm not proud of who I am, depending on the person. And we have this personality that we are. And a lot of times, speaking to different people who've had NDEs, they say, "Oh, it's so much, when I left here, I didn't want to come back to this."
mm,
And then they go on to tell me, their own experience. And some of those experiences are as simple as I was in the light and that was it. And I could have stayed there for eternity. And that's all I wanted. I didn't want it. And immediately my brain on this earth goes, well, that doesn't sound fun. What about my individuality? What about Joe, the singer, the songwriter, the guy doing this, getting on stage? Like, where's all that? I'm just going to sit in some light. And I only say this because I'm speaking for other people too that probably are thinking that, but not wanting to actually come out and say it.
yeah.
That being said, I think I have to realize I don't even understand what goes on beyond this world. And
Mm,
also, I've been advised by other people that no, whatever you think you have over there, it's very different than here. And so I guess my question to you is what would you say to someone? This is how I'm going to pose the question.
mm,
What would you say to someone who may be dealing with the fear of death and
yeah.
losing who they are? Because that is a very scary feeling for a lot of people.
It is. And I think I can answer that through my mediumship experience. So I'm what's called an evidential medium. So my job is to prove through evidence that I have who I say I have, and then I will pass on messages. So mediumship is not saying, oh, I've got mum here and she's waving and blowing kisses from heaven, because that's not telling you that that's my mum, right? I would need to bring you, and I'm not reading, I'm just going to, make an example. I would need to say, I've got your mum here, Joe, if that was the case. And I would say, I know you have brown eyes, but she's got blue eyes. I know that she goes to the spirit world at age, 62, and she dies from cancer. I know she had a dog called, Toto, and she was a teacher all her life. And you're going to say to me, yeah, that's mum, that's 100%. Now, how do I as a medium get that information? I get it because I've linked to the essence, the spirit of the person that was existing as your mum that is now existing in the spirit world. What that tells me is the memories are all there, the experiences are all there. I'm sure if she, wanted to continue to teach, or if she played music like you do, she could jam away over there as well. Would she be doing it on a physical guitar or a keyboard? No. Would she, she won't. She would be doing it on a different vibration and a different frequency. But all that remains. So we don't just dissolve into a big melting pot of light or nothingness. Otherwise, we wouldn't get that. We wouldn't get that communication. And if you can get that, that tells me that that part of us that is us here must exist there. It just exists in a different form. And the way I reconcile it is it's like we send voice and data across the airways. Like, the phone for us is normal now. We can click on our phone and we can see someone and talk to them. But where does all that, how do we get that imagery? It comes through on a frequency wave. And pardon me, and that frequency wave exists, but it exists in a different way to how we would see it in the physical. And that's how I reconcile it in my mind's eye as to how it would be. If you'd gone back 50 years and told someone we would be able to see people from all over the world on a device on our hand, they would think we were crazy. They probably would have burnt us as being, witches or possessed, because it would be unthinkable. And yet here we are. So like you said, and I love what you said, in 3024, we would say, well, yeah, they are like this because it's this particular physical phenomena or electronic phenomena or electromagnetic phenomena that, and we would understand that more than what we do today. So all we can do is look for, when science is first done, is they trial and error and they gather information. We're in the gathering data phase of what it means to be human, what it means to have a consciousness, what it means to be a soul. And we're still in the experiment of that. We haven't kind of wrapped the science around it yet. What we do know, though, is when the body physically passes, if you measure the body just before passing and just after, there is a very small difference in weight. And often people will say, is that the soul? We don't know yet. All we're doing is gathering evidence from people like me who have had these near-death experiences. And some are more dramatic than mine, and others, like you say, are simply just saying, I was in the light, I couldn't see or feel or hear anything, but that came through that way. So it's a great question, but that's my take on it right now, with what I know.
Yeah, no, I really like it. It immediately made sense because you're right. You're connecting with the energy of that soul, and somehow that soul has retained that memory. So it seems as though we don't, at least right now in 2024, we don't retain the memory as easily when we come here.
Yes.
Some of us start to have memories, but
yes,
for the most part, we're born and we think, whoa, what is this? And it's a blank slate kind of thing. But it does seem like what you're saying is then you can go over and retain the memory there. Now, a skeptic may say, I love doing the skeptic moments. A skeptic may say that you're not reading the energy of the person past, but you are reading the person you're speaking with, and they are remembering parts of that person.
Yeah, I 100% would understand that. So spirit has a divine intelligence that was beyond us. For people that are like that, I've had people, sitters we call them, people that come for a reading that are highly skeptical. They've come along because someone's forced them to, or that type of thing. And I love when they are like that. Spirit gives me information that they have no conscious memory of. They have to go home and ask someone else. And so when they do that, it eliminates the, is she reading my mind, or is she reading me? Is she reading my memories? And that happens a lot. And it comes in, I don't predetermine that. You know, Spirit has given me bits of information where they've said black and white. No, I can't understand that. And I'm looking at the spirit communicator in my mind's eye, and they're saying, no, they'll have to ask their mother or their father, or they'll get it. And then they go home and they come back and say, they will usually send me a message to say, oh my gosh, you were right. It's not me that's right. It's their people that are right. They know that. I don't need to know that. I'm the communicator. And that's what I love when that comes through.
Right.
It changes those people to absolute believers,
Yeah.
because they suddenly think, well, how on earth could she possibly know that? And I wouldn't, but I don't know it. And I don't read people's minds, but
Right.
spirit does.
That's that's great. It reminded me, and I've told this story on a few other episodes when it's not a story, but it's just a moment in my life that I had a past life regression done, and I went in quite skeptical of it, but I thought it'd be an interesting experience. And I went right into it. I mean, they told me the hypnosis guy, he told me I was one of his best he's ever had. And I had these three different lives he brought me through. And one of them I was a female, and I could see everything. I was seeing how dainty I was, beautiful. I was this Greek goddess type woman. And what was really bizarre for me was I gave my name, and it was in the 15 or 1600s. I forget, or it might have been five or 600s. I forget. I think it might have been 15 or 1600s. And I gave this name, and it was a very long name. It was interesting. And um, I remembered it. And I went home that night, and I thought, what? That was a wild experience. It felt like 10 minutes too, and it was like 2.5 hours. And I went on Google immediately, and I searched up the name and Greek and the year.
Yes.
And the name at that time was one of the top most popular female names. And
I love
I
it.
remember sitting there in a complete like disarray. Like I didn't know. I was like, how did I know that? I mean, I thought, okay, I must have seen a movie. I must like I was trying to like the skeptic in me was trying to figure out where did I get this name from? I'm like, no, I never seen a movie about a like it was a really long, odd
Wow.
name that I would have not remembered anyways. And I've never seen like Greek movies, like older movies or anything. So,
Yeah.
and anyway, I wrote to the hypnotist, and he was like, I love when that happens because he's a bit of a skeptic himself, and it helped him in his
Oh,
work. So
wow.
because he was still learning, he was good at hypnotizing people. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean he knows the truth. So he was like,
Correct.
thanks for sharing that.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
question. I look at sometimes I look at the world, I look at the way we do things, and I think, if I were looking from the outside, watching what we're doing in our existence as human beings, it'd be fascinating to watch. A lot of people don't step back and do that very often, but I often
Yes.
do that. And I was thinking just the other day to myself, here I am running a podcast. I am speaking with people who've had NDEs and spiritual experiences. There's some podcasters on YouTube and some people who have hundreds of thousands of followers now. People are really interested in it. The information's coming out, coming out, coming out. But I think back 20 years ago when I was quite young, when the internet first came out and all these things like that wasn't around at all. No one knew anything about that. And just in 15, 20 years, the shift has happened where it's so much going on. And sometimes I say to myself, okay, if we're supposed to come into this world and forget who we were and live out our lives, why are we now in a place where we have people like yourself who are having NDEs coming back and wanting to share these experiences? And some of them are even told, I'm going back to share the experience.
Yes.
They'll say you can go back, but only under one condition, that you share what you've seen here. And you think, okay, well, that means something. And I guess my question to you is, why do you believe we're moving in this direction so quickly? Is there something happening, or what is your feeling with that?
Yeah, I feel that there is a quantum shift in who we are, and we are evolving as a species, as a population. We needed to understand that going back 50 odd years or however many years, I'm not an astrologer, but we came out of the age of the Piscean age, which was about faith, religion, Christianity, looking for something greater than who we are. And we've moved into the age of Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius is technology driven. So think about the technological advances that have happened in the last, even 50 years, but certainly the last 10 or 15. AI, we're right here now, robotics, all these things that are moving fairly rapidly, including the internet. So we are here. So we are moving into a state where knowledge and technology and advancement and spirituality through technology is where the human race will go. I feel in the future our biology will diminish more and more. We literally will be brains, neural networks, and we won't be needing our physical body as much, which is quite scary to think about it. But I do believe that's the evolution. And we're going to understand this more and more. And I feel this is why people are coming back with these experiences, because they want us to understand that we're more than our biology. And, there's a real thirst. There was always a thirst in the spiritual, though. If you go back 100 years, early 1900s, and spiritualism started at that time, so that, the mediums were really gaining a lot of momentum at that stage. And it was crude. The communication was crude. We had to rely on the spirit board, or Ouija, as people call it, or we were listening to tappings and rappings, knock twice for yes and once for no. And it was very laborious. We had to get communication was like, let's spell it out on the board, and we don't do that now. It's instantaneous. My mediumship is instantaneous. I receive it, information before you've finished answering asking the question. So it's we've sped up and we're using that. So I do feel where we sit and how we sit in the world is changing rapidly. And this is why a lot of organized religion is not always meeting the needs of the population now. And it hasn't quite adapted. Some have, some not so much. And I think man understands that we need more now, because we understand the connection. And we understand through people like myself that we're living beyond this reality. It's a blink of an eye. You had your past life regression, but I had an experience where I found where I was buried in Ireland. Now that was mind-blowing, and I can tell you hand on heart, as I said earlier, I come from a Greek background. My lineage and heritage is Greek. And the first time I traveled to Ireland, I landed. And as soon as I landed, I said to my friend, "Oh, I love the smell of peat fire. Can you smell it?" And she just looked at me. She said, "Where have you experienced peat fire?" Because we don't have them in Australia. And I paused, because I just said it naturally. And I paused and went, "Oh my God, I actually don't know." And then, it was weird. I just went, "Oh, I love the smell of a good peat fire." So then I've gone to this place in Ireland, in County Clare. And I'm driving along, the back of these Irish sort of over the Burren, which is their sort of national park or area. And all of a sudden I started shaking. I started crying, because I could see the outline of the hill in front of me. And I knew that was home for me. And I grabbed my friend and I said, "Oh my gosh," I said, "I know that place. There's a church on there." Now, all I could see was grass, sheep, and stone wall. There was no church. I can tell you that hand on heart. We arrived there and we couldn't find the church, but we found someone who happened to be walking past, and we said, "What's this hill called?" And he said, "Abbey Hill." And I went, "Oh my gosh, is there a church on here?" And he said, "Yes." So we ended up going round. So we were at the back of it. We went round the hill and found it. It was from the 1100s. And because obviously now, since my near-death experience, I'm communicating with spirit, I heard, "You're buried here." And I said, "Okay, show me where." So I found the grave. And as soon as I put my hand on the grave, I instantly fell through the time just in my mind's eye. And I could see all the wooden buildings that were here in the church, not just the stone remnants of it. I could see it was summer, not winter. I was there in winter. I could see wheat and grain being grown. I could see the monks, and then I heard my name. So I got my name, and all these things made so much sense to me, because all these memories came flooding back. So I kind of went, what's that? Is that is that an existence? Is it a soul memory? And I then remembered as a child that I used to always dream that I was standing on these cliffs, and those cliffs were the cliffs in Ireland, the famous ones. I wouldn't have known them in when I was younger, and I certainly hadn't never been before. So all those pieces came together. So that tells me that we retain memories and that we are like a computer bank of experiences. We don't need to have them all when we're here in this existence, because we're learning and we're doing life on, whoever we are, like you're Joe, the musician and the podcaster. That's who you are. You don't need to know if you were the Greek girl or the Spartan warrior or whoever over there, because that's not relevant in this thing.
Right.
But you may have been all that and more. And then it takes you into the more mind bending, because are we parallel existing? Do we have future lives? Because time, of course, is only relative if you're in the time. So it's quite fascinating. And then your whole mind goes like this. It's just
right.
boom.
And that's the part that sometimes people who are just, I've been into spirituality so much of my life, and I think some people probably, if they're just jumping in and they're hearing about that, and is it parallel in lives? Am I still that Greek woman right now? And then they go, what are you talking? Like, sometimes I could see how that could be overwhelming for someone to hear, after they just went to their 9 to 5, came home and bought some chips, and they're going to sit down to watch the game. Like, they're like, what on earth are you talking about? Because we're here to experience the existence we're now. And I guess that's why sometimes I wonder why the shift is happening. But like you said, if we're an evolving species, we're evolving, and you can't stop that. You can't stop evolution. It's going to continue. And that's why, I remember when I was into the whole 2012 thing, at one point, they said, we're in a really interesting times. Things are about to really kick up. And I remember thinking, I wonder what it's going to be. And then some days I think, well, here I am. And it really has, it's so much more. Like I say to some people, if we would have talked like this 50, 60 years ago, we might even be in a room with walls that are padded because because it didn't make any sense, or we're not, So anyways, I really appreciated the conversation. There was just two quick more questions I had for you. And the one was, as a medium yourself, because you're a medium, what do you, so you, I'm sure you work with people, and I'll get that information from you on how you get in touch with you and all that stuff. But do you ever have moments where you're talking with someone and you get messages and you need to somehow turn that off? Or is it a situation where, as a medium, you can just turn it on and off? I mean, when I'm about to teach music, I know it's because it's 4:30 on a Friday and I'm going to teach. I go by a time. Whereas if you're working with people, like, you could be sitting with someone, a friend, and get a message. Like, how do you handle that?
So professionally, and it is a discipline, you have to become very disciplined. I'm on during the times that I'm on, and my spirit team, the guys upstairs that facilitate and help me, they know that. So I actually don't get it randomly all day, every day. It'll be exhausting. And it's none of my business. Unless people are asking me specifically, it's really not my business. Occasionally, like life, we have people that push in cues or impatient. Occasionally, I do get spirit talking to me. And so I had an example to give where I'd gone to a party, and I only knew the host. And when I went to the party, I saw a lady sitting with her daughter in front of me, and instantly her husband was by my side. He said, "Can you tell her I'm okay?" And I'm just, looking around, sussing it. And I'm in my head, I've gone, no, I cannot. First of all, I'm at a party. I'm telling the spirit, going, I'm at a party. She doesn't know me. She didn't ask me. I'd be putting her in a vulnerable situation. She may have burst into tears. She's got her child there. And I'm like, no. And I kept insisting, can you please tell her? Can you please tell her? So in my head, I'm like, I just said to him, just leave it with me. And then I went to the host and I said, can I ask you a very private question? And she said, yes. I said, your friend over there, has she lost her husband? And she said, yes. Oh my gosh, how did you know? She was all excited.
Right.
And I said, well, I've got him here. I'm told him I will get the message across, but it's not today. I said, would you be comfortable in passing this experience on to her when you think it's appropriate? and when it's private for her. And she said, absolutely. So she did it that way. And so that's the odd thing. So I would never just go and blurt. I think it's very, breaches boundaries. It's not ethical. There's a lot of things that happen there. So that
Right.
interruption is really hard. So can you turn it off? Yes, you should be able to. When you're first learning, though, you can get very overwhelmed. So I have a lot of students that say, oh my gosh, they woke me up at 4 a.m, and I have to remind them, it's actually you. When you shift your awareness to the spirit world, then they will come and communicate with you. So on some level, they're like, oh, I could do this. I wonder if I still can. And then they're shifting their attention. Of course, spirit will talk to you. So I have very clear boundaries around it. And I say, I have many roles in life. I don't want to be on all day, every day. I also want to be present in the physical and enjoy the physical life and
Yeah.
not be sitting in the spirit world. Yeah.
Okay. And that's what I was curious about. And I know that question
Yeah.
probably comes up sometimes, but I've always wondered that. I do believe we all have gifts like this. I have many reasons to believe I mean, I used to walk around when I was a kid in the grocery store as a little guy and I could feel everyone's energy. I'm an energy feeler where someone will be coming to, my door and I can feel what they're feeling, and I open the door and I'm like, oh yeah, I can still feel it. And then so it's more about feeling. I don't know what you'd call that, Claire something.
They're
Uh
sentient.
Claire sentient. Okay, I should write that down
Yeah.
because that's what I believe I am.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be good at seeing spirits. I
Yeah.
think I'd be
It's funny
running down,
when
I
I
don't
first
know.
looked at you, you definitely have ability. So 100%. Um, I want to, you're 100% a feeler and you get knowing. So when I looked at you, you also get knowing. I know it's that. I know I don't need to do that. They're
Yeah.
your two dominant clairs. So clair cognizant and clair sentient. But I do feel that you've got it. But see, the people get scared because they say, I don't want to see people. But it's not like the sixth sense. They don't walk around, with limbs missing and things like that. You actually see them in your mind's eye when you develop the clairvoyance. But not everyone has clairvoyance, and you don't need to be a medium. That's only one of 5 ways to get information. It's just 20%. So if you can get it through feeling and knowing and possibly hearing, then that's a different way to do it, because most people will shut that ability down because they get frightened and think, I don't want to see the spirit person.
Right. Wow. Well, I'll have to look into more of that.
Mm.
Claire cognizant and Claire sentient, you said, right?
Sentient, that's right, yes.
Yeah.
Feeling, and then the cognizance is knowing.
When I was a little guy, my mom said I would close my eyes and I would give her a name of someone and I would see colors around them. And I
Mm.
would be telling her the colors. And I started telling my friends and they thought I was crazy. So I closed that off. And so I
Oh,
knew as a
shame.
kid, yeah, it happens,
Yeah,
right? Because you get
yeah.
kind of embarrassed that you think,
You
oh,
want to be
something's wrong
normal,
with you.
whatever. Yeah, you want to be
So
normal, whatever normal is, but you
yeah,
want to be normal.
exactly. What is normal,
Yeah.
right? The last thing I always ask everybody, I always end my episodes with this, and I really appreciate our talk is, and it's one of those questions that's kind of hard to answer, but if I had simply just asked you why we are here, what comes to you? What is our reasoning to be here?
Yeah. Do you know, I think if the way I would answer that, why are we here? We're here to experience joy and love. And I really believe that very simply. My mission that I got was to be an unconditional vessel of love. And I think that's the only way we can really experience it tangibly, can't we? So we are here to lead joyous lives. We just get in our way and we complicate that. But really, imagine if we all did what we loved and we all were passionate about that. How excited would our souls be? And it truly is that. So I always say to people, we're here to have an experience that generates the joy vibration, which builds expansion, therefore growth for us as souls.
I love that. I love that.
Mm.
And where can people find your information? Do you have a website? Do you
Yeah,
have social media? What does that look like?
100%. So I'm on all the socials. So Ioanna Serpanos, medium on Instagram. Ioannaserpanos.com is my website. So IOANNASERPANOS.com. And also on Facebook as well. So yeah, reach out. More than happy to chat and to share experiences as well. And as I said, I do love teaching mediumship, so that's all on the website as well. And I teach around the world online. And I'm always, if I'm invited, I'm very happy to get on a plane and travel over to different parts of the world as well.
Wow. That is new for me. I haven't talked to anyone. I've spoke with mediums, but I haven't spoken with anyone who
Mm.
actually teaches it. I love that.
Mm.
I think that's a really interesting area of mediumship. That's really
Yes.
interesting. So,
Yeah.
well, thanks for being on today and talking about your experience. And I knew we'd go in a million directions, and we did. And I just appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming on. And I usually, yeah. Did you have anything else you want to share with anyone, or is that like good?
It's all good. Thank you so much for having me on. It really is. I love doing these because, like you, I never know where the conversations are going to go, but I always think they're really valuable. And if in some small way, if we can be that beacon of hope for someone, that one little thing that we said, then, we've done a beautiful service to humanity. So I just love that. I loved spending my time with you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I generally turn to the camera and say, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so we can get the message out to different people. And until next time, I'll see you on the next Soul Inspired. So